What's something that sounds fake but actually happened to you? Story 1. I was watching a dodgeball game when a poorly thrown ball smacked me in the head. The ball hit my head into the wall behind me, which actually knocked me unconscious briefly. I was taken to a nearby hospital to be checked for a concussion. After the CT scan was completed, 2 doctors came into the room. Good news and bad news. Good news is you have no concussion. Bad news, you have a brain tumor. Tumor was removed 6 months later without issue. Story 2. I was once in a mall late at night and stopped to use the bathroom. As soon as I came out of the stall, a goose dressed as a clown was standing in the doorway of the bathroom. After I finally got around the clown goose and started running away, I crashed into a woman dressed as a clown who asked me, "Have you seen my goose?" My friend didn't believe me until the next day, when the goose was on the front page of the newspaper for winning 2nd place in the pet costume contest. Story 3. I dialed the wrong number and was caller 10 of a radio station and won a free cruise. Story 4. I had a brain tumor that, when surgically removed, swapped my right-handedness to left-handedness instantly. I woke up and was unable to write with my right hand anymore, despite having previously been right-handed all my life. At the same time, I picked up a pencil with my left hand and instantly knew how to write with it, despite never having used my left hand to write before. Story 5. Once as a kid, I threw a snowball at a tree, missed, and hit a poor old lady who was walking past, and had to spend a long time apologizing and convincing her that it was an accident. A few weeks later, I'm having a snowball fight with one of my friends. I threw a snowball at him, missed, and hit the same poor old lady who was walking past again. This time, she was not having any of it when I tried to convince her that, again, I wasn't aiming at her, it was an accident. Story 6. I went to a super popular bar in Cabo with my then boyfriend. He was mean to me, treating me like I didn't matter. I went into a bathroom and cried. The attendant, a sweet older bathroom attendant, consoled me the best she could. 12 years later, I went to Cabo and went to the same bar. When I went to the ladies' room, the attendant who previously consoled me 12 years earlier asked me without skipping a beat, "Are you happier now? Did you get a new boyfriend? You deserve to be happy." I was shocked. To this day, I think she was an angel and not really a Mexican bathroom attendant. There is no way with tens of thousands of tourists she would have remembered me. I send her blessings. Story 7. I once ran into the same stranger in 3 different states over the same summer. We never planned it, and by the 3rd time we just stared at each other like we were in a glitchy simulation. Story 8. I was jet-lagged wandering through Dublin, Ireland, and someone called my name. I ignored it, but when I heard it again closer, I turned around to see an old college friend who lives 1,000 miles away from me and hadn't been in contact with since college. Turns out we were on flights just minutes apart, staying in the same hotel, same room number, 1 floor up, think 321 versus 421. Had the same tours planned on the same day. Story 9. I was having a liver biopsy and jokingly asked the doctor if it was his first time doing it, and he said yes. Story 10. While I thought it only happened in old Warner Brothers cartoons, I actually slipped on a banana peel in a parking lot. Story 11. Once I was traveling by Greyhound bus. There was this lady on board that would not stop talking at everyone. It was mostly benign, just details about her life, but she clearly had cognitive issues that was driving the behavior. No social cues or boundaries observed. Everyone was polite at first when she initiated conversation, but after an hour of this, people started getting tired and some got rude. Most just put in headphones and pretended she wasn't there. Then we hit a stop in the next city. A few folks got off, new passengers got on. This friendly-looking fellow spotted the empty seat next to her, shuffled up to it, and pointed inquisitively. She welcomed him, and he sat next to her, even though several people on board tried to gently warn him otherwise. This man turned out to be deaf. She immediately started talking to him. He immediately pulled out a writing pad and communicated to her that he couldn't hear. She then shushed, gestured for the pad, and wrote something back to him. He smiled. They spent the entirety of the remaining 2-hour trip in peaceful quietude, together passing notes back and forth, except for the occasional delighted giggle. I'm a pretty cynical person, but it really made me wonder about things. Story 13. My neighbors abandoned their son to me, randomly, off and on, starting when he was 3. Then the mother went to prison, and the dad fell hard into the booze by the time the kid was 12. I got permanent legal guardianship. He graduated with honors from high school. He got an academic scholarship to an Ivy League university where he graduated on time and with honors. He's in his 30s now with his own toddler and doing great in life. Story 14. I was 30 weeks along before I found out I was pregnant. Had a positive test which was confirmed at a doctor's appointment a couple days later. along with the gender reveal. I had zero symptoms until I got out of the shower one day and was leaking colostrum as I dried myself. My first thought was that my hormones were off or I had some kind of cancer because that's not a normal thing to happen. I knew pregnancy could be a cause, but I also knew that didn't happen in the first trimester, but I peed on a stick anyways. I'm not a large woman at 5'1", 120 pounds, but it turns out that the angle of your uterus and the placement of the placenta can play a huge factor in how much you show a bump. I've always, for my entire adult life, had a messed up menstrual cycle. It's normal for me to randomly miss a month or spot instead of really bleed. I was on the birth control pill and took it at the same time every day. I've had some GI issues and the baby kicking felt exactly like the same flurries in my abdomen I've always had. A few extra tests were ran and she was born healthy 8 weeks later and will be 12 in 10 days. Story 15. I fired this guy a few weeks into a job for being extremely lazy and not able to grasp simple instructions. A decade later, I'm in a completely new career, traveled 2,500 miles for a conference. That same guy is on stage in front of thousands of people giving a TED Talk about how he became a literal millionaire. Story 16. I was on a road trip one time, and it rained frogs in the middle of the night. The plops on the windshield were the first thing we noticed. We pulled over because we didn't want to run over frogs. I've worried that I've imagined it for years, but my family remembers it too. Story 17. My girlfriend broke up with me because her parents would never allow us to be together. I drove 5 hours to her parents' house to profess my unwavering love. I accidentally crashed a wedding. She had been arranged to be married. This was Texas in 2005. Crazy. I still can't believe it. The marriage was annulled, and her and I did not live happily ever after. Story 18. Former Vice President Al Gore watched me break my arm in kindergarten during his 2000 campaign tour. Story 19. I smoked weed with Snoop Dogg and Willie Nelson in Amsterdam on 4/20/2008. Story 20. When I was about 10 years old, I was walking home from a bus stop about a block from my house, and I heard this metal popping noise and then a very sharp stab into my stomach. I started bleeding and was drenched by the time I staggered into my front yard. Turns out, one of our neighbor's teenagers was shooting the stop sign with his dad's pistol, and as I was walking by, it bounced off and hit me in the stomach. It was a huge deal because his dad was a cop, and they tried for months to intimidate my family so that they wouldn't press charges. Eventually, they did a lineup, and I identified him, and he spent a few months in jail. He lost his full ride scholarship to Stanford, and I still have an indent in my stomach. Story 21. My dad's work schedule when I was a kid was Tuesday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. One Saturday, when I was around 9 or 10, I went rushing into the kitchen where my mom was and said, "Mom, Dad just got into an accident." I was frantic. I kept insisting he was in a car crash. My mom was trying to settle me down when she looked at the clock and said, "Look, it's just 2 o'clock now. He hasn't even gotten to his car yet." That sort of made me feel okay, but I still wasn't. His work was only a 10-minute drive away, and he's usually home by 2:20. Soon it was 2:30, no dad. Then 3 o'clock, still no dad. Finally, around 3:30 or so, he comes in the door, and first thing he says is a young guy behind him was too busy looking at a girl in a miniskirt, this was 1968-ish, walking by and not paying attention, and rear-ended my dad. Hard. His car was totaled. A few days later, my dad was in the hospital for weeks with severe whiplash. My mom never quite looked at me the same. I think I really freaked her out. Story 22. I once was visiting home for the holidays after having just moved for school about 15 years ago. When I went to the store, I had a few minutes of flirty vibes with the guy scanning my groceries. I left thinking about what could have been if I weren't living in a different city. I forgot about him. I lived a life, had a career, a baby, and eventually left my abusive partner and came home to live with my parents. I begrudgingly got a job at the grocery store. I took a liking to a man who is kind and genuine, who loves me back. About 3 months in, after seeing an old photo of him, that moment from years ago came rushing back. He is the cute guy I knew I liked all those years ago. I'm blown away and grateful that the feelings about him were spot on. Story 23. I broke my back completely in half in the thoracic area in a car accident to where the neurosurgeon had to take my spine bone out piece by piece and replace it with a donor's, and I can still walk and have no neurological deficits. My spinal cord stretched and snapped back. I dislocated my pelvis and fractured it in 3 places, and 11 fractures across my spine. 12 hours surgery, had multiple organ failure, went into shock, Had to have a breathing tube in for 4 days because fluid overload caused my face and epiglottis to swell up 4 times its size, and my spleen almost ruptured with respiratory failure and a collapsed lung and anemia from blood loss. At least it sounds fake to me after 8 years, and I think it sounds fake because if I never told you, looking at me, you would never guess unless you saw my back shirtless. Story 24. I once opened my door to go get my mail and a chihuahua wearing an elf costume ran into my house. I stood there, mouth open, and it ran out again. Later, it was spotted with a pack of other chihuahuas, the others were unclothed, chasing a neighbor's goat. Story 25. My phone was tapped because my best friend's father was being charged with treason during the Clinton campaign scandal. Good times. And that's going to be all the stories for today's video. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Also, leave a comment and tell me how I can make the next video better. Thank you.